This week in Greater Brisbane, preparatory works have officially begun at Victoria Park for Brisbane's Olympic Stadium project. The Queensland Government is fast-tracking more than 5,000 homes across Brisbane and Logan. Major new e-mobility laws are set to radically change who can ride and what they can ride, and Moreton Bay is building an entirely new beach from scratch. We'll also look at growing transport pressure across the region, more signs Brisbane's property market may finally be cooling, a major expansion for Howard Smith Wharves, and why Brisbane City Council says AI cameras are now catching illegal dumpers across the city. This update is sponsored by Royalty Rewards and YB Painting Services, both offering something special for viewers of the channel, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's get updated. Let's start with the story that's likely to dominate Brisbane headlines for years to come. Preparatory works have now officially begun at Victoria Park for Brisbane's planned 63,000-seat Olympic Stadium. The Games Independent Infrastructure Coordination Authority, or GICA, formally took possession of sections of the site this week, with fencing now installed around major areas of the park and excavators already beginning initial earthworks and underground investigations. Importantly though, despite some headlines, this is not full stadium construction yet. The current phase is focused on site preparation, utility relocation, test drilling, and other enabling works ahead of major construction contracts being awarded later. And there are now also significant access changes around the area. Gilchrist Avenue has closed to traffic and parking, while access from the QUT and Hurston bus stations into the park has also been cut off. However, Yorks Hollow, the pump track and the North Brisbane Bikeway remain accessible for now. The Crucifoli government continues to emphasise that more than two-thirds of Victoria Park will remain public green space after the project is completed. But opposition to the project is clearly not disappearing. After tense scenes between police and protesters late last week, demonstrators say they intend to continue protesting outside the fencing perimeter, while several Indigenous heritage protection applications remain under consideration by the federal government. Some First Nations elders and protest groups argue Barrambin, the traditional name for the area, contains important cultural heritage including ceremonial areas, burial sites, and natural springs. The government, however, argues Queenslanders want the Games infrastructure delivered after years of delays and changing plans. And there are also continuing questions around cost and timing. GICA has confirmed the stadium design is only around 10% complete, while the main construction consortium has not yet been selected. Officials insist the project remains within the broader $7.1 billion Olympic venues funding envelope, but have acknowledged there is still a long way to go before final pricing is locked in. Meanwhile, another Olympic venue project, just a few hundred metres from the planned stadium, has also reportedly hit budget pressures. Deputy Premier Jared Blay revealed proposed designs for the new National Aquatic Centre at Spring Hill were considered too expensive by GICA and have now been sent back for revision. The venue is expected to become one of the centrepiece facilities of the 2032 Games, with plans for major competition and training pools alongside temporary seating for more than 25,000 spectators. But the government says it is now applying a much stricter financial accountability process to avoid major cost blowouts. And while Olympics projects continue accelerating, another major issue this week was how South East Queensland is going to house its rapidly growing population. The Queensland Government has now formally fast-tracked more than 5,000 planned homes across 4 major sites in Brisbane and Logan through a rarely used planning mechanism called a Provisional Priority Development Area, or PPDA. The sites include the former Vizzy Riverfront site at South Brisbane, the old dental hospital precinct in Brisbane CBD, a former Energex site at Banyo, and land at Meadowbrook in Logan. Importantly, this is only the second PPDA declared in Queensland's history, both under the current government. The mechanism effectively allows the state to accelerate approvals and bypass parts of the normal planning process in order to speed up housing delivery. With housing affordability and supply remaining major concerns across South East Queensland, the government is betting faster approvals will help unlock more homes. The challenge, as always, is balancing speed with local planning oversight and community expectations. The most controversial of the sites is likely the former Visy site at South Brisbane, where extremely tall towers have previously been proposed along the riverfront. And this also connects into last week's Logan flood mapping story. Following the controversy we covered last week, Logan City Council has now voted to make significant changes to its proposed flood mapping. The biggest change is the removal of flood events less likely than a 1% annual chance flood from the city's flood overlay map, including the controversial probable maximum flood. Council says the changes, informed by an independent review, will make flood information more practical and easier for residents to understand while still maintaining protections for life and property. Other changes include new mapping for dry creeks and gullies, retaining the current approach to smaller home extensions, and introducing a new planning framework for different flood risk areas. Council says more than 25,000 properties could be affected by the changes and will now seek to implement them through a temporary local planning instrument subject to state government approval. The decision is likely to be welcomed by many affected residents, although some flood experts and planning advocates have previously warned against reducing the role of extreme flood scenarios in development decisions. Now, before we continue, if you run a local business here in Greater Brisbane, this may be useful to you. Royalty Rewards is a new app developed by a Brisbane company designed to help independently owned businesses encourage repeat customers through a simple digital loyalty system. It also helps customers discover and support other local businesses all in one place. I've put together a full breakdown explaining how it works and who it may suit, and there's currently a limited free offer available ahead of the launch. You can click on this QR code and you'll also find it linked down in the video description. While governments continue pushing for more development, there are also increasing signs Brisbane's property market may finally be cooling. New figures from Koalas showed Brisbane's median dwelling price rising again in May to almost $1.13 million, continuing to narrow the gap with Sydney. But despite the headline growth, several analysts say momentum is clearly slowing. Buyer activity at open homes has reportedly eased, listings are increasing, and some agents say sellers are now working significantly harder to attract buyers. Unit prices are still rising faster than house prices, while rental pressures also remain severe across much of the region. Some analysts believe Brisbane could continue edging closer to Sydney prices because of ongoing supply shortages and interstate migration. Others, however, argue Brisbane's lower incomes compared with Sydney may eventually place a ceiling on how expensive the city can sustainably become. Now to an update on a story we've been covering for the last few weeks. Queensland's major new e-mobility laws have now passed Parliament, with the government describing them as some of the toughest rules in Australia. From the 1st of July, police will gain powers to seize and destroy illegal devices, conduct random breath testing, and issue significantly higher penalties for offences including speeding, unsafe riding, and carrying passengers illegally. Devices capable of exceeding 25 km per hour without assistance will be banned, while riders over the legal alcohol limit could face fines exceeding $500 and court penalties of almost $7,000. A new licensing framework will take effect from August 31st, although riders aged between 12 and 17 will still be permitted to ride under parental supervision, and exemptions will apply for some people with medical conditions and disabilities. The government says the reforms are necessary after more than 6,000 e-scooter-related injuries were reported across Queensland hospitals between 2022 and 2025. Not everyone is convinced the legislation strikes the right balance. Some cycling and active transport advocates, along with the Greens, say the reforms place far greater emphasis on enforcement than infrastructure, pointing out that the legislation arrives without any major new commitment to separated bikeways. Meanwhile, Brisbane's transport network had another rough week. Major delays spread across multiple train lines after signalling issues at Indooroopilly disrupted services on the Ipswich, Springfield, Caboolture, Redcliffe Peninsula and Sunshine Coast lines. The disruption comes as Queensland Rail remains locked in ongoing industrial disputes, with commuters still dealing with reduced services and cancellations across parts of the network. And while we're talking transport, the Greens have renewed calls for the government to buy back Brisbane's privately operated Airtrain service and bring it into the 50-cent fare network. The push follows analysis of financial filings, which the Greens say suggest the airport rail concession may now be worth around $45 to $50 million, with the exclusive operating agreement due to expire in 2036. They argue bringing Airtrain into the wider TransLink network could boost usage by airport workers and travellers, allow more frequent services, and improve connections ahead of the 2032 Olympics. The proposal also reignites debate around Brisbane's long-running airport rail deal, which prevents competing public transport services from directly servicing the airport and has remained controversial since it was first signed. Whether the government has any interest in pursuing a buyback remains unclear. Whether you're a new homeowner or have owned your home for years, you want it looking its best, so why not take advantage of YB Painting's exclusive discount for viewers of the Brisbane channel? They recently picked up 2 first and 3 second place awards at the Master Painters Australia Queensland Awards for 2025, which gives you an idea of the standard they're working at. They offer fixed pricing and a 5-year warranty on their work, so you know exactly what you're getting up front. You can claim an exclusive 10% discount by scanning the QR code on screen or through the link in the description. Now back to infrastructure. 1 year after completion, Brisbane City Council says the Moggill Road corridor upgrade at Indooroopilly is now delivering around 20% travel time improvements through one of Brisbane's busiest suburban bottlenecks. The former Indooroopilly roundabout saw more than 40 crashes between 2013 and 2020. Today, the Moggill Road and Coonan Street corridor carries around 55,000 vehicles each day, making it one of Brisbane's busiest suburban road links. The project also included shared pedestrian and cycling infrastructure upgrades. Meanwhile, work is finally beginning on the notorious Lindum level crossing upgrade at Wynnum West, following years of safety concerns and 2 fatalities since 2019. However, Brisbane City Council claims only part of the federal funding for the project has so far been formally signed off, despite early works now beginning. The upgrade will eventually include major redesigns aimed at improving safety for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. While governments continue investing in major infrastructure projects, private developers are also reshaping parts of the city. At Howard Smith Wharves, Brisbane City Council has now approved major expansion plans, including a partially public swimming pool built directly over the Brisbane River, larger public spaces, new gardens, upgraded hospitality areas, and an expanded hotel. Developers say the upgraded precinct is intended to help showcase Brisbane ahead of the 2032 Olympics. But not everyone is focused on the pool and hotel. Some active transport advocates say the redevelopment represents a missed opportunity to improve one of Brisbane's busiest riverfront walking and cycling corridors, and have continued calling for separated paths through the precinct to reduce conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians as visitor numbers grow. And speaking of waterfront projects, Moreton Bay is now building what will become the region's 17th beach. Yep, an entirely new beach. More than 2,000 tonnes of sand will be brought into Woody Point as part of a much larger seawall and foreshore protection project designed to combat erosion and increasingly severe weather impacts. Importantly though, this is not simply a tourism project. The new beach forms part of a broader coastal resilience upgrade, including a 331-metre seawall designed to help protect the shoreline long term. And the project also reflects a broader pattern we're increasingly seeing across Moreton Bay. Major investment in foreshore upgrades, tourism, family recreation, and waterfront activation as the region's population continues growing. Meanwhile, in Brisbane City, Council says it's escalating its crackdown on illegal dumping. More than 200 covert cameras are now operating across known dumping hotspots using AI-assisted systems to identify vehicles, people, and dumped objects. Council says there's been a 235% increase in offenders being identified, while response times for dumped rubbish have reportedly fallen from around 18 days to as little as 4 days in some cases. More than $525,000 in fines have already been issued this year. Maruka, Sunnybank Hills and New Farm were listed among the suburbs generating the highest number of complaints. Labor councillors, however, argue council also needs to make rubbish disposal more affordable and accessible if it wants to meaningfully reduce illegal dumping long term. Now, there were also a few other notable stories this week. The University of Queensland has become only the second university in the world to partner with the International Testing Agency on anti-doping training programs ahead of Brisbane 2032. The new courses will train students in areas including doping control, blood collection, athlete safeguarding, and anti-doping management. Officials say around 1,000 trained experts may ultimately be required to support anti-doping operations during the Games. There was also another Olympics-related environmental debate this week in the Redlands. The federal government has approved the proposed Redland Whitewater Centre project at Birkdale without requiring a full environmental assessment, provided strict koala protection conditions are met. Redland City Council says the project has incorporated environmental protections from the beginning, while the federal approval includes strict conditions around koala management, habitat protection, and wildlife movement corridors. However, not everyone in the Redlands is convinced those measures will go far enough, with some community groups continuing to oppose the project on environmental grounds. If you appreciate the work that goes into making these videos and podcasts, you can help keep this channel running by supporting through Buy Me a Coffee, or become a channel member, which gets you access to extra content. This is the kind of support that allows me to dedicate my days to keeping you in the loop with all things Greater Brisbane. To those who have given support, a heartfelt thank you, both from me and from those who aren't in a position to support the channel financially. You help keep this thing alive. Also this week, Queenslanders have voted in record numbers for the state's favourite local businesses ahead of Queensland Day. Among the Greater Brisbane winners, Farmhouse at Kedron took out Best Cafe, Roadie Meats at Stafford Heights won Best Butcher, Munja Pizza at Wynnum claimed Best Pizzeria, and Bun Me Factory at Zilmere won Best Bun Me. That's one that did come up a lot in channel viewers' suggestions for good bun me joints. If I ever revive the quest for Brisbane's best bun me, I'll definitely have that one on the list. And finally this week, a reminder that amidst all the political debates and big infrastructure projects, it's often ordinary people who make the biggest difference. After a serious crash on Gympie Road at Kedron left Albany Creek motorcyclist Tyler Wiebe trapped beneath a vehicle, around 15 bystanders rushed to help, lifting the car and pulling him to safety before emergency crews arrived. Mr. Wiebe, who suffered multiple serious injuries, has since thanked the strangers who came to his aid, saying he wouldn't be here without them. It's one of those stories that serves as a reminder that when things go wrong here in Greater Brisbane, there are still people willing to band together to help complete strangers. Stories like this help you feel just that little bit better about this part of the world. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Maybe check out one of the podcasts if you haven't already. I expect the next one centered on our public transport system will be out mid-next week. I'm done.